Good afternoon, everyone. I am Commerce Next co-founder Veronica Sansev, and I want to thank you so much for joining us today. So for any new participants, Commerce Next is a community event series and conference for marketing, e-commerce, and technology leaders at retail and direct-to-consumer brands. And on behalf of my fellow co-founders, Scott Silverman and Alan Dick, I want to welcome you to today's webinar. Our topic is gaining a competitive edge, embracing AI for a seamless customer journey. Now, the retail industry has been buzzing about AI for a few years now, but most retailers are just starting to implement AI solutions. Still, AI has the power to transform almost all aspects of e-commerce, from creating efficiencies to enabling new experiences. AI will allow us to evolve much faster than traditional technologies and algorithms really could. So today we're going to look at how AI can help us create a seamless customer journey. We'll cover operational efficiencies gained from AI, best practices for hyper-personalization, how AI can improve loyalty, and so much more. But before we dig in, I want to walk through a few thank yous and announcements. So first of all, I want to thank Fabric. It has been a pleasure to partner with them on this webinar. I also want to thank our amazing speakers, Derek Yarbrough, former CMO at J.Crew, Ekta Chopra, Chief Digital Officer at e.l.f. Beauty, Vivian Chang, Vice President E-commerce at GNC, Amy Salino, former Vice President of Growth and Performance Marketing at Land's End, and Christine Flau, CMO at Fabric. I also want to thank our team, Maeve, Robert, Scott, Alan, Tracy, and Jenny, who are working behind the scenes to make this webinar a success. And finally, I want to thank you, the audience, for joining us today. Our next webinar is on December 11th. It's an audience favorite. Scott Silverman's going to host our Cyber Week recap, lessons learned, and advice for 2025. This webinar will start with a presentation by Jason Goldberg, and he does an amazing job really giving us the debrief on what happened during Cyber, followed by a panel with Tapestry, Hanky Panky, Tailored Brands, and Session AI, and they're going to discuss what they're seeing in market. So you want to make sure to register, follow the link. It's a webinar you're not going to want to miss. Speaking of not wanting to miss anything, please remember to register for the 2025 Commerce Next Growth Show. It's taking place June 24th to 26th in New York City. We're currently offering a limited number of VIP tickets, and those VIP tickets give you access to fast pass registration, 2-for-1 tickets, and free swag via our brand bodega. So our team will be sharing the link to sign up in the chat. We only have 200 VIP tickets, so don't wait to register. Now, if you missed any of our past sessions, our webinars, or anything that we've produced, our YouTube channel is a wealth of information. You just go to youtube.com/conversenext, and you'll see our entire video archive. Now, don't worry if you miss anything today. We do record these webinars. We make them available usually by the next day. I'm going to quickly walk you through where everything is on the screen, and then we'll get started. So first of all, the panel on the right, this is where all the interactivity happens. And there it has a number of different points of functionality. First, chat is where you can tell us where you're calling in from. You can give the speakers high fives. You can interact with other audience members. But if you have a question, we really encourage you to use the Q&A tab. And that's because it has some additional functionality like the ability to upvote questions. So we know what's most important to you. Now, to encourage audience questions, we're giving away a Commerce Next branded Yeti 10-ounce lowball tumbler. It's perfect for a morning coffee or a campfire cocktail. To enter to win, it's really simple. You just post a question in the Q&A tab. And if that question is posed to the panel, that's essentially an entry to win. This giveaway is open to eligible participants in the US and Canada, and each question you ask boosts your chances. So ask lots of questions and good luck. Now, around the midpoint of this webinar, we usually do audience polls. We will have audience polls. The live questions will pop up on your screen, but if you want to see the results, we'll talk about them. You just go to the polls tab and you can see the numbers live. And then finally, we have the handouts for this webinar. The slides, as well as some handouts from Fabric, are available in the handout section. And for those who are not watching live but are going to catch the replay, that handout link is at the bottom of your player. So our agenda for today, we have a presentation by Yarbrough on embracing AI for a seamless customer journey. And then we have audience polls, and then a panel discussion with e.l.f. Beauty, J.Crew, GNC, Land's End, and now it's with great pleasure that I get to introduce Yarbrough. He's the former CMO at J.Crew and Madewell and an advisor to Fabric. He's being joined actually by Christelle Falau, CMO at Fabric. Welcome.
Thank you, Veronica. Thanks for everyone for joining and thanks for having me. My name is Yarbrough. I am the former CMO for J.Crew and Madewell, currently an advisor for Fabric, as well as Ecommerce Next. We are going to run through just a few slides to set a little bit of context on AI in the retail landscape before having the panel discussion. So first, in preparation for this, I wanted to think a little bit about the history of e-commerce and retail and how that might have some clues as to how AI is going to continue to evolve it. I consider the birth of e-commerce really the mid-90s when eBay and Amazon were born as some of the really first pioneers of e-commerce. So we're now talking 30 years of e-commerce. And one thing that has definitely held true through those 30 years is a constant state of disruption and evolution. So we saw that with, the disruption with broadband, mobile adoption, deprecation of cookies, so many different stages of e-commerce. I think most recently, the pandemic, which really accelerated digital adoption in even the most mature legacy retailers. And I think what we're seeing now with AI is the acceleration of evolution and disruption is just unparalleled. And we're going to talk a little bit about what that means. So the bar really truly has been raised. I think one of the ways that I would characterize the landscape today, if you guys are familiar with last year's Oscar winner, Everything Everywhere All at Once, that's really how I'd characterize the current landscape. Just that consumers are in more places and shopping more brands than ever before. And I think in that landscape, brands need to think about two things. One, how do I get my product to show up in all of these places, all these devices, channels, social platforms, marketplaces, to get in front of consumers on all this vast array of places where consumers are engaging and shopping with brands. And second, how do I orchestrate orders in this much more complex ecosystem? So even though this ecosystem is more complex, customers still expect the same level of transparency and seamless experience across the order purchase experience and post-purchase experience as if they were shopping directly with the brand's website. It doesn't matter if it was a marketplace or on TikTok Shop, they still expect the same level of service. So, what then that means for AI and where the opportunity comes in, I think the most important thing is to understand that AI will touch every part of the retail value chain. AI will be used to help manage and streamline getting products out there in more places efficiently and beautifully, and also managing the order experience from pre, current, and post-purchase much more seamlessly and transparently. So again, AI will touch every aspect of the value chain, from product conception and design, merchandising, inventory planning, order management, personalized customer experience, and even enhancing offline experiences. It's my belief that in the near term, what we're going to see is a hyper focus on efficiency. And that's really the first stage of AI, is just really thinking about how can AI automate aspects of my business. Excuse me. And fundamentally, this is the correct place to start. So asking the question, what are the easiest places to drive automation in my business that allows human capital to focus more energy on more complex and more value-added activities? So in thinking about efficiency, obvious areas might include automation of forecasting, optimization of fulfillment, streamlining operations. On the marketing side, this might be things like improving product recommendations, generating SEO copy, generating multiple versions of image crops for PDPs, those things. As the efficiency play starts leveling out as more and more brands adopt I think we're going to see this shift happening where there's much more investment in AI as a tool for differentiation. And so really when you start thinking about the kind of art of the possible with AI in terms of things like truly creating AI agents to interact with customers or creating really incredible personalized customer journeys and experiences for your customers, that stuff is for most brands going to be more advanced. There are certainly brands thinking about this already today, but I would argue that the first step is to really think more about the efficiency and automation as building blocks that then when you have those in place and you start combining them, they become opportunities to do differentiation. So it's almost like a start with the building blocks and really think about all the different little pieces before you go to, from 0 to 100 overnight on creating personal experiences. That's really how I would think about it at a high level. The most important thing to think about for AI, for a successful AI strategy, is really starting with data. There's a lot of sayings like good data in or bad data in, bad data out, really. So you're, getting to a place where you're actually thinking about differentiating customer experiences or creating personalized journeys. It's going to start with data. And I would argue for a lot of companies, your first step before you even think about an AI strategy is really think about your data strategy. That's where a lot of this is going to start. And you think about a lot of organizations today, data is typically pretty siloed, and owned in disparate functions. So you might have a POS data silo, you might have a customer data silo, web event, a data silo, marketing platforms. I'm sure there's even others that are not listed on this site. So I think step number one is really to think about what is your company's data strategy and how is that the foundation for your AI strategy? That might, include a solution around a unified data strategy, a unified customer data platform that ties all of these pieces together. I think, that idea of a unified data source can be very expensive, or it can be very tricky and difficult, especially in a large organization. There are ways to think about a data strategy that isn't just about a single silo of all your data in all the different places. You could take the approach of a data mesh strategy where there's still separate repositories for data for different aspects of the business, but they're planned and governed from a centralized point of view. And there's aspects of how do you link the data? How do you give AI access to the different sources of data so that it's almost like an agent, if you will, knows, okay, I need to piece together customer data from this silo and web event data from this silo in order to form a better picture. Regardless of which strategy you choose, the important point or takeaway is to have a data strategy before you have an AI strategy. So now I'm going to hand it off to Christelle to talk a little bit more about the order orchestration piece explicitly.
Perfect. Thanks, Derek. And thanks for that great tee up. Hi, I'm Christelle Flau. I'm the CMO at Fabric. And one of the big challenges we've been starting to tackle is how do we simplify this orchestrating of demand and fulfillment? I love the nod to that movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once. This is what it feels like for retailers today, right? How do you keep up with all of the different channels, all of your different fulfillment centers, your stores as fulfillment centers? Like, how do you keep all of that data flowing, give the visibility across all of those aspects? So if we want to move to the next slide, this is why I'm super excited about what we've been working on, which is really this concept of orchestrating the order. So I am happy to announce today our AI-powered order orchestration suite, which actually allows us to connect the demand side of the house to the fulfillment side of the house and give this real-time inventory that has been this quest for everybody for a very, very long time, and just starts to get even more complicated in the world we live in today, as well as the world we're going into. So for us, there's 4 key benefits to looking at the world this way. First is selling more with real-time inventory, right? How do we get more inventory into the hands of the consumers when they want it and where they want it? The next one is the one I'm really excited about, which is AI innovation around order fulfillment. So fulfill from the most optimal location with automated insights and actions right in the platform that allow you to take actions like reducing split shipments and increasing customer satisfaction. All managed in a configurable UI that's easy to use through natural language, that really helps you make changes at the speed of business and help you become a differentiated company in the market. The other one here is really around flexible store fulfillment. So it's turnkey and gives you the flexibility to launch these store fulfillment services fast. Whether it's something like BOPIS or ship from store, you can prioritize incoming orders, adjust inventory, and manage transfers in real time with an easy to use more mobile store fulfillment app. And the last piece of this is because every single retailer is trying to juggle a bunch of different applications across the demand side and the fulfillment side. Fulfillment side is this integrated ecosystem. So easy to use integrations that allow you to really start to see that data flow from one side to the other. This is where I think the company thinks that OMS is going, right? Order management. It's definitely a new wave of thinking about order management, which has typically been in the back of a lot of people's tech stack, but really using that as a competitive advantage to increase demand for the front end of your operations.
So we have 3 questions for the audience. Our first question is a repeat of what we asked last week, but we're interested to kind of see how this audience check your temperature on where you are from an AI perspective. So how far along is your company on their AI journey? And you have 4 options here: advanced, so you're currently using AI throughout your e-commerce experience. Intermediate, you have maybe 1 or 2 AI technologies in production, you're looking at more. Beginner, you're starting to experiment with AI. Or D, haven't really started yet. So this is a more advanced group, which is great. We're seeing about 9% of you list yourself as advanced, 39% of you listing yourself as intermediate. So you have 1 or 2 AI technologies in production, 33% beginner, and 18%, or now I guess 35% beginner, and 18% haven't really started yet. And it's perfect no matter where you are kind of in your AI journey, because we're going to touch on a lot of different things that'll help you take this further. We asked a similar question on last week's webinar, which is focused on tactical talks, and it was almost equally split between intermediate and beginner. So this is a clearly a little bit more of an advanced group from an AI perspective, which is wonderful. Our second question is, what has been the biggest challenge when it comes to implementing AI? And our options there are A, building a business case for the technology investment; B, unifying disparate sources of data, which Derek talked about in his presentation; C, technical resources for implementing AI solutions; D, compliance and legal issues surrounding the use of AI; E, finding concrete use cases that will work for your particular business; or something, or F, something else, and in which case we'd love for you to specify in the chat. The biggest challenge, and this is consistent with what I've heard at our various events, is unifying disparate sources of data. I think a combination of just having legacy and new technologies and just being able to get all of that in one place is a consistent thing that we've heard that's a challenge for this industry. The second biggest challenge is the technical resources for implementing AI. We're going to talk about both of those things during the panel discussion. And then tied for third is the business case and the legal issues, and then finding concrete use cases and something else. And then our last question is related to our Cyber Week webinar. What we would love to get you guys to answer is, how do you expect holiday sales to compare to plan? A, much higher than plan, B, somewhat higher than plan, C, at plan, D, slightly less than plan, or E, much less than plan. 44% are now saying they expect it to be at plan. About 25% expect it to be above plan, somewhat higher, and about 25% expect it to be below plan. So really interesting to kind of see that. We have 6% saying much less than plan. So the majority, it seems like it's going to be, for majority of people, it's going to be basically at plan. So let's see, and good luck this holiday season. And now it's with great pleasure that I get to bring up the panel and we get to go into the discussion. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
So the audience got to meet Derek and Christelle earlier. Now I want to just quickly introduce the other panelists. Ekta Chopra is the Chief Digital Officer at e.l.f. Beauty. We have Vivian Chang. She's the Vice President of e-commerce at GNC. And Amy Salino, who's the former Vice President of Growth and Performance Marketing at Land's End. Welcome, everyone. We're excited to get into this discussion. I want to start us off with a rapid fire question, because I think kind of Derek did a great kind of setup in terms of like, where is AI today and where is it going? I guess if you could look at how AI has helped, how has AI helped, get this question out, how has AI helped retailers reshape the customer journey? And if you could just pick one example of the most promising AI use case that you've seen, what would it be? And Derek, since you're like right next to me on the screen, I'm going to start with you and then go to Amy, Christelle, and Vivian.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think everyone can tell I'm obsessed with data and data strategy. And I think, you know, an area that I just feel like is low hanging fruit for most businesses is looking at all of your e-commerce data for people who are not converting and really tapping into that using AI of like, how can you use AI to better understand what customers are doing on your website, even those that are not converting, right? A lot of people will come to your site and they're shopping, they're getting inspiration, they're comparing products, and AI could really be used to figure out, okay, here's a whole bunch of customers who are actively shopping and comparing coats or shoes. How can you use that data to then create experiences, you know, to further move those customers down the funnel? I think that's when you think about the amount of data that's there, it's incredible.
Amy, what do you think?
I've got three, actually. I've seen some really interesting things as far as generating dynamic landing pages, category pages specifically, or some people call them PLPs, product listing pages, for long tail SEO queries. As a way to drive traffic and maybe decrease the burden on paid social or paid search, excuse me. AdeptMind does that, as well as some other companies. When I was at Cerberus, I had the benefit of sitting like with the data science team. They had worked on a really interesting AI technology that helped predict the ROI of influencers in social. They use the APIs out of YouTube and Facebook. And the alternative to that is you get a bunch of names from an agency and you just throw things at the wall and see what works. So that was really exciting. I've seen a company called Ben Labs advertise the same. And then the last one, which I think I'm going to talk about later when we talk about discounting, is the ability to differentiate offers based on a consumer's propensity to buy based on their click behavior on the site, which I think is really exciting in terms of saving margin for retailers and brands alike.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually Session AI, which is one of the companies that does that, will be sponsoring the next webinar and speaking on the next webinar. Christelle, what are you seeing?
I need to go
Besides
back
Fabric,
to
of course.
Besides fabric, yeah. Look, I think, going back to what Derek said just around data, but that data from an inventory perspective, right? So I think there's a lot of interest around, how do you make sure, how can you accurately forecast demand at the SKU level? How do you get all of that rich product information into that same kind of view, right? So there's less of the swivel chair happening, so that you can meet customer expectations. And you can do so really, really fast. I think from a back end perspective, there's a lot that AI can do on an efficiency front, and also in a visibility front. So that's where we're excited to see AI be applied.
Awesome. Ekta, what are you seeing?
My God, so many use cases. So how do you pick one, right? But I do think from the ones that have already been mentioned, I think there's tremendous opportunity on the creative side to really serve sort of the hyper personalization. But if you have all your data structure right, you have sort of all the understanding of your consumer journey and how consumers are purchasing. The next big thing that you have to solve for is a creative supply chain. So I think that's where AI can have a huge impact.
Yeah, yeah. Both in terms of giving you creative ideas as well as like iterating on the various variants
Exactly.
that you need for the different platforms.
Exactly.
Vivian, what are you seeing?
I'm going to pick a slightly different kind of area than where folks have been talking, and go with digital shelf optimization. So on the retail side, where you have thousands of SKUs that you have to create product content for, oftentimes, I think historically it's been, the R&D team decides what pack is going to look like, or marketing has an input. Where I'm excited is actually leveraging AI tools, creating almost like the target demographic, target audience as a simulated panel, and then you can have an objective score when you look at even designing product imagery before it's actually in production. And then you extend that all the way down to metadata, into descriptions. How do you actually cater it to the audience? And so I'm really excited for both the efficiency side, but also just the effectiveness that will come for a digital shelf.
Awesome. Very interesting. A lot of different kind of uses of AI already kind of brought up in this conversation. I want to just, Derek, I want to follow up because Anne-Sophie Rumilhak, I hope I pronounced your last name right, from L'Occitane, she had a question if you had any examples of a vendor or any vendor recommendations for the non-converter customer to be able to like understand that non-converter customer. Is there anyone that comes to mind that does that?
Gosh, I was caught off guard. There definitely are some who do that. I'll probably have to think about it and then I'll add it to the chat.
Okay, perfect.
I can answer that one. Session AI does that, as does Kahuna.
Yeah.
There you go. And Sophie, two potential vendors, Session AI and Cahoon. Was that the other one?
Kahuna.
Kahuna. Perfect.
Thanks.
Awesome. All right. So my next question is I'm going to start with you, Vivian. So Derek talked about companies using AI to create efficiencies, and I think a lot of what we're using today is in that area. What are some examples of efficiency that you've been able to achieve at with AI, with GNC or at prior companies?
Yeah, there's a lot of different buckets and directions I felt like we could take this. Certainly what I talked about with the product content creation and the validation on it. Building off of something Amy actually mentioned, we are using an AI partner for SEO long tail pages. So you think about GNC, you have lots of different supplements, protein powders, creatines, but people are actually searching very specific use cases, right? What is the right protein for me as a woman who is an athlete, maybe ages 40 to 50, something like that. And so we're actually able to spin up these long tail pages that have some copy. Essentially, they're a category page, and then we're now extending it to also have a similar tool optimize our paid search titles, descriptions for the shopping ads, right? And so that is saving a ton of time because of all of the resources that would have had to go into creating landing pages, figuring out what products to pull in, now able to do it, really automated and jump on trends a lot quicker.
Yeah, I can imagine. How many, just like roughly speaking, how many category pages have you spun up using AI for these different use cases?
So we're actually still in like early days, but even then we've got a few hundred. You think
Wow.
about products, that thousands of products out there. And so it is one of those almost like crawl, walk, run of getting all teams comfortable. We are in a regulated space, and so we have to be careful what we're putting out there. And so there are still eyes on everything, but really excited for the potential, and have been able to get cross-functional partners also excited about this.
Yeah, because I can imagine like the potential use cases that people are using supplements for are endless and can fall in so many different categories. Amy, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I'll talk about two things. One is research, and the other relates to creative imagery. As a marketer, kind of, as I've said many times, and you've heard others say, the consumer is where the rubber meets the road. So I'm always looking for an opportunity to do research. And as everybody knows, research is expensive and takes time. I mean, even if you're doing a relatively simple survey, you're looking at a couple weeks, more likely a month or two, in order to get research done. So there's an early stage company called Unsurvey, UN Survey, and they are using AI to do the screening, do the creation of the questionnaire, the moderation, and the analytics. And they're able to spin up a survey very quickly and talk to as many as 10,000 consumers in one day, which is just mind-boggling, the efficiency gains of that. They do a conversation graph, so there's no hallucination. They're able to probe either within a question on a specific word or probe just on a question generally, and very quickly kind of compile and synthesize the verbatims in a way that's really easy to read. And they're able to do this for personas and specific demos. So the speed of that versus the alternative is what really kind of blows my mind in terms of an opportunity for somebody in marketing. On the other side, I mentioned or a moment ago, creative imagery as an opportunity. This one I think probably has a little ways to go. I do have a friend who works on a mattress brand, and at her prior mattress brand, she had done an entire group of creative assets. They don't really have seasons in mattresses, but for her mattress brand, completely AI. And it was absolutely shocking because you couldn't tell, and B, it looked like my last vacation to Mallorca, with the mattresses sitting there looking lovely. So I think that's coming. One of the areas that I do think is the biggest opportunities for companies is probably less sexy, but important, is kind of on the supply chain side when it comes to demand forecasting and movement of inventory. So that's more of a, that's an efficiency, but that's more of a positive impact to the business when it comes to obsolete goods.
Yeah. There's so many use cases and so many ways to kind of gain efficiency from this. I want to talk about personalization, unless anyone else has anything that they want to chime in on efficiencies. No. Okay, then let's go to personalizations. So, Ekta, talk about how AI is helping customers hyper-personalize the customer experience, and where have you seen the most success? Because there's a lot of aspects of the customer experience you can personalize, but where have you seen the most success with AI-based hyper-personalization?
Yeah, I would say that, personalization has been around forever. You guys have been talking about on these webinars forever, but I think the word really that's added is hyper personalization. And I think the dream of personalization actually has more chances of reality with AI if you use it right. So that's like the number one thing. You have to have your data structured in the right way. And then how do you leverage that data to understand your consumer? Then how do you bring those consumer experiences to life through AI? Whether it be search, how are consumers searching? Where are they clicking? How do you, upsell to, really making it very, very unique to their experience. One of the things that we have at e.l.f. is a Beauty Squad program, which is 5 million Beauty Squad members. This really allows us to intimately understand our consumers, their journeys, and but it's also those consumers who are not part of the program. How do we get them enrolled, and how do we help them sort of see the benefits? So there's so many different ways to leverage the capabilities of AI to deliver a very hyper personalized experience for your community. And that's something that I do feel is one of the most powerful use cases that you can see through execution. But that's how sort of we're testing and learning with it at e.l.f. as well.
So you're using the AI to help summarize what this like squad is doing and how they're interacting, so you can better understand the different kind of journeys that customers have. Is that a fair summary?
Well, Beauty Squad membership, that's first party data. So really
Okay,
understanding sort of how our first party data, how the Beauty Squad members are engaging on the app. How are they engaging on the site? Are they scanning receipts, from Target and getting points there? Are they, if they're an channel shopper? There's so many different ways to sort of understand the interactions of the consumer.
got it, got it. And I have a follow-up question because Anne Sophie actually also had a question for you. She specifically called out that e.l.f. seems to have a your TikTok shop seems to be very well integrated as a channel. And
Mhm.
her question was whether you're using AI to personalize the site experience for social shoppers as well.
We're starting to take a look at it. Right now, we're focused on just our first party data. We're testing something with UGC right now that takes in some of the content from TikTok and then allowing us to see how we can personalize some of that. But that is something that's testing and learning, not really full fledged. We're using it for hyper personalization.
Well, it seems like the experience is well received regardless, so which is great. Vivian, do you have any examples of how you're using AI for hyper personalization?
Yeah. So I'd say it's similar to what Ekta said. I think it starts with insights and understanding the audiences. I think one of the big shifts is that mostly based off of bandwidth. We used to always think about it like personas or segments, and you have, 3 max, maybe 5 personas, and then you have to build everything against it. I think in this new world of using AI to build these like marketing automation journeys, we're really unconstrained now, right? And so we're able to do a lot more thinking about micro segmentation and how do we show differently, but based off of how they interact with the brand, what products, yes, and like demographics, or what are their need states coming in. So that we're really excited about. And then at Burt's Bees, we were able to get to 100% of email, SMS kind of touch points having some element of personalization. And so I think that's like a place to start, right? A lot of it is product level recommendations, so leveraging the tools, you mine the data for surfacing up what's the right product at the right time. But I am personally really excited to see where some of these like automation tools, consumer journey tools in particular, can help to stitch things end to end for marketers so that we're able to do things at scale that used to have to get summarized and simplified into buckets.
Yeah, and I can imagine that could be so complicated at GNC because depending if customers are trying to serve a health concern or trying to like deal with like a wellness challenge, there's all these different reasons why
Yes.
people might be looking for supplements, and all of those seem to have probably very different journeys. Um, Vivian, Jennifer Dwork from Wisp, she actually had a question about the AI tool that you were using, I think for the category pages that you described. Can you share what that is?
Yeah, sure. So for long tail pages, we use a tool called Optiversal. And then earlier I spoke about the kind of digital shelf. We use a tool called Visit, Vizit, that kind of scores the imagery before you might set it live.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you. Um, So one of the challenges of AI personalization, and we saw this actually right in the survey results from today, is getting all the disparate data sources into one place. It's actually the biggest challenge that I think this community seems to have. Um, and without getting the data unified, it's hard to fully take advantage of the AI tools. So Derek, how are businesses solving this problem? And also what resources do they need to be able to tackle this kind of a challenge?
Yeah, great question. I think to me, there's the strategy really is about unifying your data, but maybe it's not literally unifying your data. I think the whole data space has really evolved. I'm certainly not, a technical expert on it, but I know that, in a very large legacy business, unifying multiple silos of data can be very, very expensive. And so that is a very different strategy than a smaller business. We used to talk a lot about data warehouses, data lakes. Now there's kind of new concepts, data lake houses, data mesh. So there's different strategies. I think the key is that if your company has an AI task force, that should be basically inextricably linked with the people who are defining and leading a data strategy, and really taking stock of like current state. I would argue anyone in an e-commerce business, your e-commerce tech stack at the very least should be built off of a customer data platform. And I would personally argue that most businesses, if there's any aspect of data that you're going to bring in-house and own your data, it would be the customer data, right? You might still have a lot of other vendors for other data silos, but I'm like, there's nothing more valuable than your first party data in your business and all the things that you can do with it. And so many use cases of, I don't know, even in marketing, like I dealt a lot with, I had multiple platforms for messaging to customers, email blast, trigger emails, SMS. They all had different definitions of who the customer was. So being able to then centralize, that view of who the customer is and being able to create something like a next best action and say, hey, I need to send this type of message with this type of offer and this type of product to Ekta, who I know only checks her phone. She only likes to text, whereas Christelle actually responds in email. I would save a lot of bandwidth by making sure I'm actually targeting the right person in the place where they're most likely to respond. And that's just one example.
Yep.
So.
And I'm just predicting the audience questions because they seem to be consistent. Are there vendors you would recommend for data unification that would be good to look at?
I'm going to hesitate to make recommendations because it will totally vary. And there's so many layers to data. There's, the identification piece of who the customer is. There's the actual warehousing of the data. There's processing. And so there's numerous vendors. But I think the key is, create a task force in your company that's focused on data strategy and AI and make sure it's cross-functional. And has like your tech partners, business partners, and even people from, very importantly, the people who deal with inventory.
Yep. And would you say that the task force kind of be all the different stakeholders? Could this work be done by, does it have to be done by in-house teams, or if people are in smaller organizations, can consultants also be helpful in terms of unifying the data?
Yeah, 100%.
Service integrators.
Yeah.
Christelle, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I think the one thing that I'll just kind of pile on from what Derek said is just the definitions, right? Like, I think the one thing we always forget is there's different definitions and different groups for different things. And that is like the biggest problem in unifying the data, is because not everything is a vanilla implementation of technology. You've customized it probably to fit your needs, but in this task group is really starting to define those common definitions so that everyone's speaking the same language. Because as you start to add more and more data and more and more complexity, like we're seeing this with what some of the work that we're doing for our customers, is that's where stuff gets hung up. That's where stuff can't get read and understood. So you can't deliver those recommendations and those insights that make sense. And this is why sometimes when you use Chat GPT and you put something in there and you get a bunch of gobbledygook back, right? Because you haven't, you're not using the same definition as somebody else that's used, that's asked that same prompt. So I think for me, that's the big thing is making sure everybody agrees on the same language and you're looking at the data holistically and not just in silos in different departments.
Yep, absolutely. Garbage in, garbage out. If you don't have good data,
100%.
what
That's where AI falls down.
Awesome. Let's talk about chat quickly because I think it's such an interesting thing, and we've definitely seen some mixed results. So companies have started to use AI in chat. There's obviously been some challenges, whether it's like taking the chat down a path where the AI down a path where it hallucinates, or having it answer questions incorrectly. I think there was an example in the travel industry where it was giving people refunds on their tickets when they shouldn't have been getting them. I guess my question for you, Vivian, are AI tools good enough to engage with customers directly yet? And what kind of guardrails do AI-based chatbots need to be effective?
Yeah, I think we've all, as consumers, experienced it, right? Like it can be really frustrating to go through this AI chatbot that you hope is going to be more efficient than picking up a phone or talking to someone, and then you get stuck in like 20 question loop because it won't get out of that. So, I think that's the challenge right now. So I personally am a belief of leveraging AI to tap into the extensive knowledge base of internal resources, data, it's like Q&A bank, but then put almost like a human face or a human interaction in front of the actual consumer, because I think that the tools are still a little bit clunky right now. So as an example of some directions that we're just kind of considering right now with GNC, it is using AI to help build bundles or regiments for consumers. So, interact with, hey, this is what I take right now. What else would you suggest? And we can train the logic to say, okay, don't go over this many grams of protein for this this person, and then they can look at all of the ingredient SKUs and make some smart pairings together. So I think that's really interesting. And then earlier there was a question about AI tools for offline experiences. So you could imagine even extending what I just said, and GNC has thousands of stores, and we have store associates and coaches, equipping them with a tool in their hand that is AI powered, that can answer the questions that consumers have coming in, right? And you just think about how powerful and how much more rich that offline in-person experience can be, that we're also then more confident that we're not giving out any kind of like questionable suggestions for someone. And so that's the direction that I get excited about when I think about like the AI agents. It's like, how do we provide education tailored to your lifestyle, and then strong product recommendations behind it?
Yeah, I actually just had a great experience with like an AI. I don't know if it's AI or just whatever, but it was like I had asked a question to my doctor on One Medical, and they said, here are some articles that we think are relevant. And then they said, did this answer your question? No. And then they connected me to a person. It just was like, they said, we're going to try to give you a self-service answer, but if it doesn't work, you just got to respond and we'll connect you.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I think the basic customer service things, like if you can even save some hours or 10-20% of that, then you're doing better as a company.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if 10% of customers can self-service their answers, that's just a little bit less time for the humans to have to answer things that are obvious. Awesome. Let's Amy kind of started to tease out this whole thing about loyalty and discounts. So I'd love to just go back to you, Amy, on this. And how can AI help foster loyalty beyond discounting? And how can you help match customers with the right offers at the right time?
Yeah, so this is really exciting in terms of impact, because most brands and retailers are, offering the same % off to everyone, or maybe differentiating somewhat by channel, or by what groups you might be opted into, loyalty email, for example, a different offer on affiliate. A lot of folks are using CDPs to identify people. A lot of people have ESPs plugged into some type of personalization engine. The exciting thing about, I saw Session AI demoed very recently, is that they're doing real-time behavioral AI, and you don't need any data, and you don't need a CDP. I don't know if that's true for Kahuna. When I demoed Kahuna, it actually took less clicks than the Session AI demo, but the Session AI demo I saw only had 5 clicks, and then they were able to give a price sensitivity score and segment you into one of 3 buckets: likely to buy, on the fence, unlikely to buy. And then you can fire and trigger an offer to each group appropriately. So think about the points of margin that can be saved, and maybe even improve, if not maintain, the same conversion rate. So that's what I mean when I talk about, the thing that's very exciting is impact to business and impact to profitability with that. Kahuna does very similar.
I love that example because I think it brings up a good point of like, there's, as Ekta said, we've always been talking about personalization for decades now. But I think that's a great example of contextualization. So you may not know a single thing about that customer, but based on certain user behavior, which is the vast majority of the people visiting your website, you can start to ascertain how serious or unserious they are, even if you know nothing about them, and tailor the experience.
It was taking 5 clicks. The known universe might only be 10%. So now you're able to attack the other 90% in a way that is going to drive results. It's real time. As I said, you don't need a CDP. So that was, very exciting and impactful. Kahuna does a very similar thing, I believe, and potentially with less clicks. But I didn't get as deep with them as I did with Session AI. I just think there's a lot of potential in this particular area here.
Yeah, and I think also, like with loyalty, the more you can get relevant products in customers' hands, the more likely they're going to want to purchase, and you don't have to rely on discounts. I think especially, as you have a large catalog, some of it is about telling certain stories, but some of it's just about making sure the customers see the things that are relevant for what they want.
I'll just
it's
add
like crazy that
one
we're
point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll add one point to that is, oftentimes we think about just hyper-personalization in the context of what are we doing for the consumer, but knowing sort of the insights from how consumers are interacting also helps you optimize how much content you're building, and are you building the right content. So there's also cost savings and efficiencies to be gained across the board, because imagine the briefing process and how long it takes to sort of get those assets briefed and so forth. Don't waste your time on something that's not working, right? So it also, I think, helps the teams become smarter too.
Yeah, absolutely. Another example of that, Ekta, similar to what you described there, is I've heard people use it to summarize data, whether it's survey data or
Exactly.
customer reviews, just like all these different efficiencies you can get that, a junior person would do now can be done with AI.
Exactly.
We're almost coming up to the hour, so we're running out of time. I'm going to just have one more question. I'm going to turn it to you, Derek. And actually, it's perfect because Anne-Sophie also asked the same question: is how do you build an ROI for an AI investment? So how do you build that business case when you're looking to invest in AI, and what KPIs and metrics do you use to measure the success or failure of that kind of technology investment or pilot that you may have run?
Yeah, I mean, I would say step one, I would first take stock within your AI task force of all the things that you're already doing with AI in your company. Because if part of the pressure with AI is just like my boss or the leadership team is telling me we need to do AI, if you can first show, here are all the places where I'm already taking advantage of machine learning, automation, generative AI in my business, that might scratch a little bit of that itch. So you can really focus on what you need to. But I think really, frankly, it's about starting with that list and then really building that framework of what you're going to tackle next, which could be either I'm going to look for my biggest impact KPIs and where I might have leakage in my funnel, like horrible return rate or fraud rate or a really low rate of converting one and done customers to 2-time purchasers, whatever it is, like really take stock of those big KPIs and start measuring the impact if you improve them, even nominally, or look at some of your most meaty processes internally where maybe you always have a lot of issues. For example, we had huge product catalogs. We often had a lot of challenges with getting products up in a complete way, or perfectly complete. Maybe that's an area AI can help you tackle, which then frees up time of merchants and site merchants to do things that are more value added. And I think if you just really think about, again, going back to like AI is building blocks, don't aim number one for perfect, beautiful, customized journeys. Start with the building blocks of those things, get those right. And even with some of the data pieces and vendors, try to find ways to do some of that in-house, or at least like create tests, like testing a vendor versus an in-house model. And I think some people realize like you can actually build some of these things in-house. You don't have to automatically go with a vendor in every case.
Yeah. There's some things if you don't have a lot of variance that you can do manually. There's other things that AI can make a big impact on. Ekta, any additional thoughts on how to kind of build that business case?
Yeah, I mean, I think Derek summed it up really well, but I would say that there's 3 types of ROIs that you have to sort of account for. I would say when the buzz with ChatGPT started, people were throwing money at it, testing and learning, and just, sort of building that awareness. But now you actually have to prove, is it a cost savings? Is it a revenue uplift? Is it a risk reduction? And all 3 areas, there's many use cases that you could be actually delivering significant optimization for your organization. So I would say look at all your use cases and bucket them under these 3, because there's definitely a lot of opportunity there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Derek, Amy, Ekta, Vivian, Christelle. Thank you for joining us, for sharing your insights today. I know this was way too short. We could have gone on for another hour, but we'll be back on December 11th with our Cyber Week recap and lessons learned and advice for 2025. We look forward to seeing you all very, very soon.
Thanks, everyone.